MAGA billionaire and conspiracy theorist Bill Ackman was shredded in an interview so brutal that even one of the MAGA co-hosts of the interview was unable to save him despite multiple interventions. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, as you know, there are many rich right-wingers who cultishly devote themselves to Donald Trump. Elon Musk is obviously the most famous, but there's another one out there, a billionaire investor by the name of Bill Ackman. Now, Bill Ackman is an interesting case because, like Musk, he used to be critical of Donald Trump. As a matter of fact, just as one example, on January 6, 2021, Bill Ackman tweeted at Donald Trump and said, "It's time for you to resign and apologize to all Americans." Now, less than 4 years later, he's publicly and has been publicly endorsing Donald Trump for the presidency in the 2024 election. So he shows up on CNBC, and as you know, CNBC has three hosts. One of them is MAGA. The other one, that's Joe Kernen. The other one is Andrew Ross Sorkin, who is more liberal, more centristy. And when the time came for Sorkin to question Ackman, it was brutal. And it was so bad that Joe Kernen repeatedly tried to interject to save Ackman. It didn't help. Some of the things that Ackman says here are profoundly disgusting, so brace yourselves.
First of all, you were a longtime Democrat. You've supported Democrats. We talked about this.
I would say I've always been a centrist, but I've supported more Democrats by far than Republicans.
I just want to read you. This is John Kelly, the former chief of staff of Trump. He worked with him directly.
Sure.
And he says that in many cases, I would agree with some of his policies. So you agree with the policy piece of this that I think Trump is presenting. But he says it's very dangerous. It's a dangerous thing to have the wrong person elected in high office. He goes on to say, in his opinion, he believes that Trump meets the definition of a fascist, would govern like a dictator if allowed, and has no understanding of the Constitution or the concept of the rule of law. He goes on to say that Trump had made admiring statements to him about Hitler, you're Jewish and care about Israel, had expressed contempt for disabled veterans, and had characterized those who died on the battlefield for the U.S. as losers and suckers. How do you get your head around that?
Well, one, it's one person stating a series of things, which I don't know whether...
There are 28 people who have worked for the president, not just in close proximity, but in the Oval Office with him, who have come out publicly and expressed things of this sort.
I think actually, Kamala Harris lost 92% of her staff, too. But
So you see how Joe Kernen has to interject because Ackman is so outmatched by Sorkin. He understands that there's no credible answer that Ackman could possibly give because Ackman's an investor. So again, I use the example. Actually, Anthony Scaramucci, one of the many former high-ranking Trump supporters to come out against Trump, used this example too. If you are a capitalist and, dozens of members of the board of directors of a particular company go public and say, hey, don't buy this pill that our pharmaceutical company created, or hey, don't buy this car that our automotive manufacturing company created, you probably wouldn't buy the car. The logic should also apply to politics. And Ackman is not stupid, but he's so cultishly devoted to Trump, he knows he doesn't have a satisfying answer to this because in any other context, this would be decisive and Ackman would never support this person like Donald Trump, who has so many high-ranking members of his previous administration come out against him in an unprecedented way.
Actually, I think that's a relevant sort of point. So if you want to talk about, I don't.
By the way, I just want one piece on that. There are people who would argue that maybe she was not an organized person and was not a good executive in that regard, right? But I don't know of anybody who came out publicly against Kamala Harris claiming that she was for Hitler, that she was against the Constitution, and that she was calling people who died on the battlefield on our behalf losers. Let's stipulate that.
Okay. Let me address. Number one, I don't think Trump is for Hitler. Okay, I think that's absurd. Okay.
And
first of all,
why say it when you know that?
Hey, I get this is my hour.
I know. Go
Maybe
ahead.
you give me an hour.
Okay,
let's see how long it takes.
Please.
You know it's not true. Why say it?
So one, Trump's not for Hitler.
But John Kelly, his chief of staff, who knows Trump far better than Bill Ackman does, says he is for Hitler, that Trump did admire Hitler, that Trump repeatedly praised Hitler. So the evidence that Trump is for Hitler outweighs the evidence that he's not. And I want you to hear, I guess, the evidence that Ackman proffers.
Most of Trump's friends are Jewish. He grew up in the New York City real estate community. He's got a daughter who's Jewish. He's got grandchildren who's Jewish. Right. He was probably the most pro-Israel president in terms of committing to do things and actually executing on them.
But what he said.
Moving the embassy, delivering the control of the Golan Heights to Israel.
By the way, I'm just asking the question.
I think it's absurd. But the other thing that hasn't been.
So you see, well, he's saying, well, listen, he may not share Hitler's anti-Semitism, but what about the fascism? This is what Ackman does. Ackman's saying, well, Trump may not be as anti-Semitic as Hitler is. Well, no one's saying that. I mean, I should say that Trump does have a sketchy history with anti-Semitism. He feted two prominent anti-Semites at his home, Kanye West and Nick Fuentes. Marjorie Taylor Greene, a well-known anti-Semite, is a close advisor of his, Laura Loomer and others. So Trump does have a checkered history with respect to anti-Semitism. But the point isn't necessarily that Trump shares Hitler's anti-Semitism. It's the fascism. It's the authoritarian impulse. And again, Ackman has no satisfying answer to this. But again, note how Joe Kernen is repeatedly trying to bail Ackman out to the point where it's even frustrating Ackman himself. Another clip.
Danger is that when you characterize someone as a fascist, dictator, rapist, and you've already got him there, and if the American people do elect him, there are certain people that are never going to accept this.
Well, a judge is determined that a judge determined that of rape. So what are we doing here?
He wasn't convicted of rape.
Look, unfortunately,
say it if he wasn't.
There's a lot of legal cases that are brought against Trump, which I think lack credibility. And they're cases that wouldn't.
That's what we're talking about.
Determining for juries.
Sometimes juries make mistakes, and juries rely on instructions from judges.
So the jury that found Donald Trump liable for sexual abuse and defamation, and the presiding judge clarified that by sexual abuse, the jury meant that Donald Trump digitally raped E. Jean Carroll. Bill Ackman says, sometimes juries just get things wrong. Don't worry about it. It's stunning. Like, what do you even say to that? This is the mind of a cultist. You produce any bit of evidence, and Ackman, like Elon Musk, like so many other MAGA supporters, are going to say, it doesn't count. I don't care. Sure, Trump said that, but this is what he meant. Okay, fine. He actually meant this. He just said it. Just words. It's just, they constantly move the goalpost. They constantly shuffle around the burden of acceptable proof. The justice system doesn't matter. Not when it's against Trump. If Trump is contradicted by anyone or anything or any institution, Trump is right. That is what Bill Ackman is saying. Pretty pathetic stuff, but some more clips as well.
Ask you about your own mistakes.
Sure.
So one of the things I was going to ask you about is you care about information, misinformation, and truth.
Yes.
You have been very prolific on Twitter recently.
Yes, which increases the risk of my reposting something
that's where I wanted to go with this, because you now have a massive following, and what you think your own personal responsibility is as such. Sure. Given that. And one of the examples that I was just going to point to is you had a tweet out earlier this year directed at Bob Iger,
yes.
Disney CEO who owns ABC, effectively alleging or claiming, and you said, if true, that you felt that, or you thought that the debate, given some of this stuff that was going around, was mishandled.
What I said was the following.
And
someone on Twitter, X,
right,
published a affidavit that made a series of claims about the debate that had some credibility to it. At least it looks.
Well, it turned out to be wrong.
We saw the debate.
Okay. There were elements of the debate that made it look, the nature of the fact checking and otherwise. And if that happened on CNBC, right, the right thing to do, in my opinion, is, okay, fine, do an investigation, determine whether it's true or false. That's all I was saying to Bob Iger.
It was about questions had they been given to the candidate, to
among other
things. And your point was they didn't turn it down. They didn't say, no, this didn't happen. And there were other things there, like the size of the podiums that hadn't been disclosed in advance.
Yeah, so there are a series of allegations that made it look like the debate was, quote unquote, rigged. And so an objective media organization would say, okay, fine. You know what? We're going to take a look at the emails. We're going to look to see if something untoward took place. And that's why I thought, again, in light of the proximity to a presidential election, the fact that this is the only...
But it turned out to be wrong.
I don't know.
You actually published that it turned out to be wrong.
No, I didn't say it turned out to be wrong. I said it looks like this was not a true. There's been no investigation. All we know, I think there's some questions about the credibility of the person who posted it that's made me come to the conclusion that it's likely not true.
That's where I think that you.
How pathetic is this stammering idiot? He's so unprincipled. It seems pretty clear that the alleged ABC whistleblower's debate story claiming that Kamala Harris was given questions in advance and other advantages was a fake. That's you walking it back, Bill Ackman. This is why people say you're a conspiracy theorist, because you just knowingly signal boosted this stuff irresponsibly with no evidence to support it. And by the way, ABC did deny the allegations. But this is what MAGA Republicans do. They say that they should be able to make any accusation, no matter how ridiculous or far-fetched, and then you should be subject to investigation as a consequence. So whatever they claim, whatever they assert, they have to offer, they are not obligated to produce any evidence. The mere accusation means that you should submit for some sort of forensic examination. By the way, that's a standard they would never allow for Trump. Think of all the accusations, credible or otherwise, that have been made against Trump. Would Bill Ackman and other MAGA Republicans say, Donald, that means you need to open your books, open your emails, open your correspondence. You can't plead the fifth. You need to cooperate fully? No, of course not, because it's a double standard. Anything to benefit Trump. That is the only standard by which we evaluate these things. If you're a MAGA Republican. One last clip of Bill Ackman's disastrous CNBC performance.
And your whole career talking about truth, honestly.
Yes.
You go out there publicly talking about companies that you think are lying.
Sure.
And I just want to know what you think when you see, for example, former President Trump publicly say on the record that he forced Deere to not move to Mexico. And then the company has to come out with a statement that says that that's false, fundamentally false. He puts on Twitter or on social on his social media platform that Jamie Dimon is endorsing him, and then J.P. Morgan has to come out publicly and say that's not true.
Actually, that's not what happened. What happened was Jamie said some positive things about Trump. Someone posted on Twitter that Jamie's endorsing him, and Trump, in effect, retweeted.
Let me ask you this, though. But as somebody who cares about truth,
yes.
Use the Deere example, because that's as black and white as they come.
So look,
what do you think of that?
I think there are probably many examples of Trump convincing and or threatening a company that if they open up a factory in Mexico, that he's going to, tariff their goods or whatever, and maybe confuse the company. Okay, but he certainly has used that kind of technique. But let me hold on.
Go ahead.
I want to make my own arguments here.
So again, even Joe Kernen's desperate to help him out. He's like, man, you're whiffing this. Of course he is, because the facts aren't on his side. Bill Ackman's a smart guy, but being a smart Trump supporter is like being the smartest flat earther. When the facts are so squarely diametrically opposed to you, you come off like an idiot when asked difficult questions. Here he is defending Donald Trump's integrity, defending Donald Trump against credible accusations, credible allegations, credible convictions and or judicial settlements of rape. There's no line. It just doesn't matter. This is an example outside of Elon Musk. This is yet another example of what the true Trump derangement syndrome really is, which is that Trump is perfect, and you might throw a veneer on it. You might say, okay, Trump's not perfect, but for all intents and purposes, he is to you. You'll say occasionally, oh, Trump is flawed. But those flaws are meaningless. When people actually point out the flaws, you fight them every step of the way. You're like, no, that's not true. No, he didn't do this. No, he didn't say that. Okay, he did say it, but he didn't mean it. This is what he actually meant. Oh, he contradicted and said that he actually meant what he said. Well, those are just words. This is so pathetic. I just watching this and was so frustrating to watch. Andrew Ross Sorkin, of course, did a really masterful job asking those questions and grilling Bill Ackman on this. Bill Ackman was woefully outmatched, again, just because he's backing someone against whom the facts are so squarely opposed. And MAGA CNBC host Joe Kernen did everything in his power to make it a 2v1, and he failed spectacularly. In the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.